Hey everyone, and welcome to Brawlhalla Weekly, Episode 7. My name is partofthecreed, your host.
I'm Physic, one of your co-hosts.
And I'm Designated Asian, your other co-host.
And today our special guest is going to be Twilight, who plays third at Combo Breaker, is an absolutely dominating force in the NA 2v2 tournaments with Stevenator, and is generally one of the newer players to the Brawlhalla scene. But first, we're going to go over news this week. On the dev stream, first thing we got is new maps, which I don't think we've seen for a while. To be fair, these are all going to be free-for-all maps, which means they're not competitive, they're not in 1v1, they're only going to be in the casual free-for-all queue, but as far as concepts go, I think they're pretty cool. The first one is called Cave, and it basically has a giant wall on the right side of the map, which I thought was a very unique mechanic. I know that as far as that goes, people don't really like Twilight Grove for that reason, so I don't know what you guys think of a map like Cave.
Well,
I was going to say, go ahead.
Well, wasn't Chill Penguin X the dev who was on the stream who makes the maps? Wasn't he saying that those right walls actually have like slightly increased impulse? So if you hit someone off of it or throw something off of it, it has like 50% more velocity. I think he was saying something like that. So maybe that's an interesting way to kind of combat that. Is just kind of like cartoonize those walls and just make it so that the goal is to hit him into it because there's this insane force off of it. I don't know, but yeah, I think it's goofy. It obviously, it's if you're going try hard in a free for all, then you're gonna want to be on that right side of the map because then obviously you have slightly more survivability because you can't die to the right as easily. But that's just my immediate opinion.
Like you said, Creed, it does bear some resemblance to Twilight Grove, and I know sometimes I get frustrated because I'm trying to hit people off the right side and they'll ricochet off of that floating platform, and it's like that, but a much more extreme version. And I'm definitely glad it's not going to be in the competitive queue because I think that would make for some very one-sided gameplay, I guess you could say. But I do think it'll be an interesting concept for a map, and it could be fun to play just in free-for-alls or with your friends, or maybe even for some friendly 2v2s.
Yeah, certainly. And it's good to see that in general they're bringing on some more unique maps with interesting mechanics. Going off of that, the next map that they showed off was Wheel, which has these 4 sets of spinning platforms. Which means it's constantly moving, right? Like, the only thing that's not moving in that map is that circle in the middle. But I think it can lead to some really interesting scenarios.
Honestly, I'm just really happy that the maps that I'm actually happy that the maps they're putting in aren't going to be competitive maps. I think that a lot of the time, especially with being some of the higher ranked players in the community, we get very focused and caught up in the competitive aspects of the game, and sometimes we can lose sight of the fact that there are a lot of casual players of the game who don't necessarily live for the competitiveness. So getting some more interesting maps, even though they won't be played in competitive, I think is a really good step forward for the game.
Yeah, going off of what you were just saying, Physic, I kind of agree. I think right now BMG is kind of in this weird zone where they're trying to appeal to both competitive and kind of casual people, right? So that's why Worlds is more than just the tournament. There's also panels and other things. They've kind of expanded the aspects of maybe you're not there specifically for to compete, but you're also there because you just, you enjoy the game. I think that's kind of what they're also doing with these new maps, these free-for-all maps. Obviously, this wheel map is not a map that I would ever want to play a 1v1 on, but it's interesting, and I kind of like that they're trying new things. Personally, I hate moving platforms. I hate the moving platform on Blackguard. They got rid of one. I hate the one that still exists, but I appreciate that they're doing something with maps that, it does literally 0 for me because I don't play a lot of free-for-all, but I appreciate that they're doing it.
Yeah. I remember when they were showing off Wheels in the dev stream, one of the things that Dope Brain said was, make it smaller so we can get infinite downlights, which, as broken as that is, I do kind of want to see them put out like just a test map of really small Wheel just so we can see infinite downlights, because that's going to be really cool, just as a concept.
That would just be really entertaining to watch, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Moving on to the Thursday dev stream, we got more BCS details. So there's a lot going on here. Most notably is the rules. Everyone needs to read the rules, and they've iterated this a few times, but it's important to remember, that the rules in BCS are not necessarily just ordinary, tournament rules. I've been in 100 tournaments already. I know how the standard set works. No, there's a lot of little nuanced things. We're going to cover a couple of them now, just so you get an idea of, hey, you need to pay attention to these or bad things will happen. Like one of the first things that I noticed is a player cannot say anything in chat within a minute of their game ending, which is to avoid spoilers. So if you're playing a game, there's obviously that delay between your game ending and the Twitch stream seeing it. So if you go into chat and you're like, oh crap, I did awful, like that's not good. You can't do that. Saying anything like that will result in disqualification. So, I mean, personally, I think that rule makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of the times players will lose a game and just vent in chat right away, and that sort of ruins the experience for everyone.
And I know that sometimes there are other players in the lobby who are watching what's happening, and I don't remember if that in particular is banned in BCS, but I do remember reading that those players also would not be able to say anything within a minute of chat, or within a minute of the game ending.
Right.
Just to really ensure, okay, if you say these things, you are going to be punished because that's not okay.
I mean, just in general, like, don't do that.
There are people who they aren't even players. They would just kind of hop into the lobby, right, of tournaments, and then they would like just type in chat like, oh, that was a great ground pound, like before anything happened. And so I think they're trying to crack down, not specifically on that, but obviously, like, I think players in general have been more diligent about locking lobbies, but specifically the spoilers rule is so that if you're playing the game, you don't ruin the fun for the people who are watching it on the stream side. That's the overall goal. But at the same time, I think BMG knows that players like to talk in chat, because I'll be honest, the rules for BCS are slightly based off of Smite's rules, and in Smite, players cannot talk in chat at all. And I think BMG is like, oh well, we know the players of Brawlhalla actually enjoy talking in chat after their game, and it's not always just about the game and being like, oh man, that I sucked, blah blah blah. They want to just like talk to other people. So it's just like a 1 minute rule of just buffer for stream delay is more or less what's going on. But obviously, yeah, don't spoil it.
Yep. And you can always talk, when the analysts come on or whatever, you can like explain what happened to you. But just remember that you have to have that 1 minute buffer and pay attention to that if you really want to say something. All right. Another rule that I noticed, you cannot forfeit a match. You can't do that. They want you to try your hardest. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into every BCS, managing the bracket, making sure everything works out. You forfeit your match. That makes it very taxing on like the viewers who came here hoping they'd see this amazing match, and all they got was this guy who forfeited, and suddenly, that experience isn't there. So if you forfeit, you may surrender your prize money. So before you sign up for any BCS tournament, make sure you can participate. Make sure you don't have anything that can come in the way. Don't go into a BCS tournament thinking, oh, I gotta do something halfway through BCS, but I may as well play so I can get like top 8 and get $10. That's not how it's going to work. You can't forfeit. You can't do anything like that. Finally, if you're lagging or something's wrong, with your controller, you have 10 seconds from the start of the match to suicide to get a rematch for the game. I know in past tournaments that I've seen, that rule is that if it's before any stocks are taken, but in BCS, that's not the case. It has to be within 10 seconds of the start of the match. So, make sure everything's okay quickly.
Honestly, I think that's a pretty good rule. Just in general, it does give you a chance to be like, oh crap, something's wrong. The only issue I can see with that is if your controller just stops working, which has actually happened to me before, and then you can't even suicide. I'm hoping that another player or the tournament may be a little more lenient if that's the case, because obviously that's a situation where you would want to suicide and maybe you couldn't.
I mean, as far as I know, if that happens, you can always just like get to your keyboard as quickly as possible and hold left or something like that.
That's very true.
Well, not only that, but like if 10 seconds of the game goes by and the other person hasn't hit you, like, come on.
All right. So, those are just some examples. You guys need to read the rules completely thoroughly to get a full idea of every little nuance. So go do that. The link is in the description. It's very important that you do that before BCS starts, or else, you could lose prize money. You could get disqualified, and you don't want that to happen. But hey, the first BCS tournament has started registration. It's the US 2v2 tourney that happens on June 18th. So get hyped for that.
Yeah, and with that, we're going to go on to community news. Liquid Nairo was actually playing Brawlhalla the other day. For those of you who may or may not be familiar with Liquid Nairo, he is one of the top Smash 4 players right now. So that is absolutely huge. And going alongside that, he played... he had a set time of about 6 hours that he was going to play, and then either he was going to stop or he was going to switch games, but he ended up going over that time by an hour and a half, which... I mean, obviously he enjoyed it, or somebody held a gun to his head and made him play for an hour and a half extra.
Preferably the first one.
Probably he enjoyed it, which is a good thing. And it's very interesting in the sense that characteristically, I personally see a lot of negativity coming from Smash players who play Brawlhalla, and they're like, wow, why are there so many jumps? Why is there, like, they don't generally like it, but Liquid Nairo likes it, and I think that's good for the game, because... I mean, if he likes it, then hopefully other people will at least look at it and like it. It's good exposure overall.
Yeah, I remember there was a tweet that when Nairo was streaming the game, all the BMG devs were watching at once. Like it was a good moment, definitely, and hopefully, he enjoys the game more. Other Smash players enjoy the game more. Everyone can enjoy the game more. So I think it's great exposure, like you were saying.
For sure. And other than that, we're going to talk about a little bit about servers. BMG is definitely aware of the server issues. I know there have been a lot of complaints on the subreddit. I'm sure there have been angry tweets at BMG. I'm sure there's been, Steam forum posts and whatnot. They know. That's the short of it. The servers have been being attacked. They've been trying to work on it. I believe Tiverus has said multiple times that he has been in communication with them, emailing back and forth, trying to get things resolved, and they're still working on it. Is it resolved right now? Maybe. But if it does continue, BMG will look into getting someone else to support their servers. If anyone who is listening or watching or whatever is having trouble, email BMG at support@brawlhalla.com. Send them a Tracert. If you Google Tracert Brawlhalla, they can. I believe
I'll have a link in the description for sure of how exactly to do that.
Yeah, and it'll help them better figure out what's going on. Tracert specifically, it shows the route that information took to get from you to their server. So they can kind of see where along the route is there an issue, is there a hang up along one of those routes, or is it like on the server side, or maybe there's something on you as an individual side and your connection to your router is maybe not as great as you might think. So check it out. Go Google it. Creed will have it in the description somewhere, and make sure that you send a message to support@brawlhalla.com. And at the end of it, say I love you, Foda, because I think he's the one who checks them.
And yeah, like what it sounded like, and the impression that I got was that the last thing they did, and I want to say this was something like Friday, the server providers basically pushed something that was meant to get rid of the attacks or like stabilize the servers. It backfired, so the servers shut down completely. But once it rebooted, then they were stable. That's the impression that I got. Obviously, nothing's that simple. So, as Tiverus said in his Reddit post, just keep sending things if you're still having issues, and they're going to keep resolving it as much as they can, because they've been working really hard to try to make sure that this gets resolved as soon as possible.
Yeah. Anyway, with that, I think that moves us on to the tournament news, and there have been a few tournaments in the past week. First and foremost, we have Gravy Cancel EU, in which Dobreen took first place. EXO, going under the name Daiku, took second place, and Multimum took third place. Now, Dobreen and Daiku, I'm going to keep on wanting to say EXO as long as I live. Dobreen and Daiku taking first and second, that's no surprise to me, but Multimum I've never actually heard of as a player before. So I'm not sure if that's just I can't talk. Unfamiliarity with the EU scene, or if that's just a new up-and-coming player of some sort.
It sounds like Malteger's alt account.
I was gonna say that too. It sounds a lot like Malteger. I don't know if it's the same person, if you like change it up or whatever, but that's what it sounds like.
Gravy Cancel also hosted a 2v2 tournament, which I think was one of their first 2v2 tournaments, and not really surprisingly, Steve and Twilight took first place. They're known to be a very dominant force in the NA 2v2 scene, if not the best NA 2v2 team. And like I said, taking first place, definitely not a surprise. Great to see more amazing play from them. In second place, we had Remy and Boomy, two huge members of Community, have been longtime players together. But really, the most interesting contestants in that tournament came in third place, and that would be Foda and Taibo, which is a little bit surprising. I thought they weren't ever competing again.
I think, well, what I understand from that Gravity Cancel tournament was that the prizes were community colors, so it was okay for them to participate because it wasn't money, but I don't know exactly what policy BMG has as far as their employees participating, but it's okay because there is the BMG curse of slowly getting worse the longer you stay at the offices, so we won't need to worry about Foda and Taibo anymore.
Shots fired. I feel
we'll see.
You might get challenged to a few money matches after that, Creed. The last tournament that happened was the Beef Tournament, the first of its kind, I think, and Stevenator, again, took first place. Long-time tournament competitor, very strong player. No surprises there. Noel took second place, and Ilyu took third place. Both very strong players. Not necessarily quite as well known as some of the other top members of the community. But
I know that the Beef Tournament sort of flew under the radar, but there were a couple people talking about him being like, we gotta stop Stevenator from getting to first place. Clearly that didn't happen.
They certainly tried, but I guess it didn't quite work out. The last thing in tournament news was actually already mentioned. The BCS tournament, the first one, is coming up. That's a 2v2 North American tournament with a $1,000 prize pool. That's next Saturday on the 18th. If you want to register, you've got to do it this week. Before then, those signups are open. Once again, make sure you read the rules, but get ready for that because that's going to be one heck of a tournament.
Very exciting. With that, we're going to introduce the guest for this week. Twilight, can you hear?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Alright, I can hear you guys.
Alright, Twilight, so why don't you introduce yourself? You know, where are you from? How old are you?
Okay, I'm Tyler Twilight Whitaker. I live in Indiana in the Midwest of the United States. I'm 19 years old.
Very cool.
Cool. So, as we were saying with tournaments, on Thursday, you absolutely dominated Gravy Cancel 2v2 with your partner Stevenator, and if I'm not mistaken, y'all are more than likely signed up as a team for the coming BCS this coming Saturday. How are you feeling?
Well, I think Steve and I are probably, since EXO is EU and can't participate with an NA partner, I'm pretty sure that we're probably one of the best teams in NA, and I'm feeling pretty good about the upcoming tournament.
What do you think is your biggest threat as far as teams go with regards to the BCS 2v2? What potential 2v2 NA team do you think would actually give you a run for your money?
Okay, so Pugsy doesn't really have a partner because he was playing with EXO, so he has to find someone else, which I assume will be Egg Soup. So I think they're going to be a really good contestant. And then Remy and Boomy also, they gave us some trouble. We had to switch up our comp a lot to be able to counter what they were doing in the Gravy Cancel 2v2 earlier this week. So if we can counter them, I think we'll be fine, but they were playing very well.
Okay, and then going alongside that, this isn't the first time, or that wasn't the first time that you played alongside Stevenator. I believe y'all played together in the 2v2 clan battle thing that happened a while back with Boo. Have y'all been a team for a while, or was that your first time? Where did that team up come from?
Okay, so literally, I was becoming a better and better player. Like, I just joined Boo, right? I was not that great yet. I was becoming better. Everyone in Boo already had their 2v2 partner. And then it was Pugsy and Steve at that time, and then something happened with them, and Steve was just like, "Hey, I don't have a partner anymore. Do you wanna try it out?" I was like, "Sure." And then we decided to just play a bunch of ranked, and we realized we had insane synergy, so we were just like, "Why don't we make this permanent?" And that's when that happened.
So you placed third at Combo Breaker. Just how was that? How did that feel, just being the third place at this huge LAN event?
Well, I did it once before with Final Round where I placed second, but this one was really special because there was a ton of people I knew there, and especially I got to meet Foda, who was amazing to meet in real life. Just Combo Breaker as a whole, it was a lot bigger than Final Round, and there's so much more space, so many more people. And what was so cool about Brawlhalla in particular was that we had like 180 registered people. There was a ton of people that had interest in the game, so it was really cool to just like go there, play in pools against people who've never played the game, and then they're like, "Wow, this game's actually insane," and then you could talk to them about the game and stuff. And top 8 was actually really surprising. There's legit Punisher who didn't make top 8, which we all thought he would. There was a lot of people that should have made top 8 that either didn't perform well, or people like Absent who performed really well.
Or
taking out
Happo,
Magma Bob.
the surprise
Happo,
pick.
yeah. Happo, I forgot about him. Happo, and then Absent took out Magma Bob for top 8, I think. Or, yeah. So, people just performed really well. And then, something for me personally, on LAN, I get so nervous, and I can't play like myself. And no Johns, but it definitely showed, because Boomy beat me. I've never lost to Boomy before then. I've never lost to him after. So it's like, I don't know. I was just really nervous, and I think I could have taken first too, because I fought Zaloxry in pools. Top 32, right? Winner side. First game, he barely won last stock red. Second game, I 3-stocked him. And then he switched to Ember. And then I don't know what happened. I just got destroyed, and that's how that went. Anyways, Combo Breaker as a whole was an amazing experience, and I can't wait for more LANs to come from Brawlhalla.
Definitely sounds like, you're going to need to work on those nerves as we get closer and closer to Worlds, because that's going to play a huge role.
One more thing, especially with Final Round, we got to play, we were secluded into this tiny little room with like 10 chairs and no one really watching. But at Combo Breaker, we were on VG Boot Camp. We were on this huge stage in front of a lot of people. It was a lot more nerve-wracking.
Tournament nerves are real, man. But moving forward, how and when did you first discover Brawlhalla?
Okay, so I was playing Rocket League, which is one of the games I spent a lot of time on before I found Brawlhalla. And some of my Rocket League friends, they're like, "Hey, we're about to play this game called Brawlhalla. Do you wanna play with us?" I was like, "Sure, I guess." We'd ended up doing like an 8-person free-for-all on Brawlhaven. And I was like, "Alright, well, this seems pretty fun. I could get into this." And then when I was going through the main menu, I realized, wow, there's ranked 1v1s and 2v2s. Now, I came from Melee. I've been playing Super Smash Bros. Melee for about 3 or 4 years now. And it's like, I have to go to someone's house or to a tournament to play. So it was like, oh. And then I found out that there was ranked, and I got good connection to it. I was like, yes, this is a game I'm going to spend so much time on. And then that happened about early November 2015, I think. Yeah, early November 2015 is when I found Brawlhalla.
So, one other question. You were the last person picked up by Boo before Foda left, right?
Yeah.
So, being that you're kind of not the last member of Boo, but you are one of those.
You're the
people.
reason they broke up.
Yeah, what's wrong with you? But you're one of those who's known as being a great player just by having that kind of on your player resume, so to speak. So that being said, where do you hope to go from here into the future?
So the plan with Boo when Foda left was we were still gonna like have Boo like the in-game clan just for like crew battles and stuff. But we're all gonna keep our tags to show to like sponsors if we're all going for sponsors and stuff. To show that we were in Boo, and that meant that was the most prestigious clan that there is in Brawlhalla. So it was just something to help us out to look good for sponsors.
And I mean, certainly I know that as far as clans go, I want to say every member, if not most members, if not every member of Boo, came from other clans. If I remember correctly, you're the only person who went from no clan to Boo. Like, that's definitely something you can hold in high regard.
Yeah, let me tell you the story about that, actually. So, I just found the game in early November. The first days of me streaming it, the first day was me playing it, I decided to stream. And, like, the third day, I was, like, 1850 ELO or something insane for your third day, and EXO came to my stream. I had no clue who he was, and back then I was really arrogant. I mean, I kind of am now, but it was a lot worse. But I was like, who's this EXO guy? I'm going to destroy him. Come fight me. And then you can bet what happened. And then after that, he's like, you're pretty good. Let me teach you. And I was like, okay. And at that time, I didn't realize how amazing that opportunity was. But from there, I got to play with all the Boo guys. I got to meet everyone. I got to experience top-level play. And I think that helped me out a lot. And people are like, you're only good because EXO taught you, but in all honesty, EXO didn't do anything. He just introduced me to all the Boo guys and gave me a lot of good sparring partners. So that helped me out. And then, I don't remember when the Ren 1v1 tournament was. Do any of you know?
I don't remember, but I remember when it happened, and I remember they won it.
Yeah, I want to say about mid-February is my guess.
Okay, so about 3 or 4 months into playing the game. So at that time, I wasn't that great, but I think part of it as to why I won was I got a pretty lucky bracket. I didn't have to face EXO, no Pugsy, no any really good players, I guess. I did show that I could win. I forgot who I played, but I ended up 6 winnings the last 3 in winners or loser side, and 3-0 the first set, 3-1 the second set. And at that point, the thing now is like when I'm a top player now, but like back then, it was so exciting to like everyone's cheering for you because you're the underdog and you win your first tournament, and it's such an exhilarating thing. And now everyone's like, "Oh, Twilight's in this tournament. Oh, he's gonna win." It sucks, but back then it was amazing. And then the next night, Foda added me on Steam, and I'm like, "Oh my god, what's happening?" Foda doesn't just add random people. And then he talked to me and asked me to join Boo, and then that's that story.
Very nice. The magic of sword cider. So now we're gonna move on to some of the standard top player questions. What games do you like to play in your free time besides Brawlhalla? I know you were talking about Rocket League before. Is there anything else that sort of stands out?
Okay, so my history of video games came from like 5th grade. I don't remember what year that was, but I got an Xbox 360 and I played Call of Duty. And I played Call of Duty for like so many years, and that was the only thing. And then I switched to PC. I was like, alright, what can I do on PC? And I found League of Legends. League of Legends I've been playing for almost 5 years now, I'd say. I don't play it that much anymore because of Brawlhalla, but I got pretty good at that game. And then when I got bored of League, I found like Counter-Strike. Because with League, I used to be really into watching like LCS and huge tournaments on Twitch, and then after a while of playing it, it got boring. And I found Counter-Strike stuff on Twitch, and I was like, wow, this is fun to watch, let's play it. So I got into Counter-Strike. And after Counter-Strike, when Rocket League came out, there was a lot of hype for that, so I decided to try that, and then I played that a lot. And then, from Rocket League, I found Brawlhalla, and those are basically the only 4 games I play in my spare time right now. I play all of them whenever I feel bored of the other. Yeah.
Very nice. if you weren't dedicating yourself to being a top player in Brawlhalla, what other hobbies or careers might you be pursuing?
Okay, so right now I'm a college student. I just finished my first year of college. So in the very first semester, I decided I want to do computer science. I tried it. It was a lot harder than I thought it would be. And I was like, do I really want to do this the rest of my life? It's kind of boring. I don't know. So I switched to animation. And animation is really fun. It's the semester I had of it was incredible. I'm probably going to stick with that. So my career of choice would probably end up being animation, but what I do in my spare time now is I play the piano. I play piano. I've been doing it for almost 2 years now, and I just find sheet music and try to learn it. I'm trying to get into voice acting. That's one of my really huge hobbies, but it's really expensive because you need acting training, like you need voice training, you need all that, and all that costs money, and it's as a college student, I don't have any of that. So hopefully after Worlds, I get first place in everything, I'll have money. But
no problem.
Yeah, voice acting is gonna probably wait until I graduate and have like a stable income before I can really pursue it. But that's what I really want to do, and so that's one of the things I've been working on in my spare time.
Very nice. All right, so Twilight, I know a lot of people know this, but to those who don't, where does your in-game name come from?
I don't know this.
You're gonna know. You're not gonna like it, but so in the very beginning, my name was just Twilight Sparkle, which is a character on My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. Okay, and then when I realized I was getting good at the game, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna be Twilight Sparkle because that's weird. It references it completely, and I was like, okay, I'll just shorten it to Twilight and go on with that. So that's where my name is now. Because Twilight, just like if it's just Twilight, people just assume the book. Like it's like unless they ask specifically where it came. No, not really, but it's like something more normal, I guess. And if I won't tell them unless they ask. So.
But now the world knows.
Now the whole entire two viewers know.
All right, and so finally, who is your favorite legend in the game? If you had to pick just one.
Okay, so I'll tell you the story about how I became a Bodvar main. Alright, so I was playing the game, and one of my friends from Rocket League, he's like, you gotta try Hattori. Hattori's the best character. She's so good. It's like, okay, I'll try Hattori. And then I stayed with Hattori for probably a month, maybe. And then I was playing with Daiku now, Exo back then, and he uses the Asgardian Bodvar skin. I'm like, how do you even get that skin? I don't see it in the store. And it comes with the collector's edition, the collector's pack. So I was like, okay, that's really cool. I'm going to buy it. So I bought the collector's, and I literally switched to Bodvar solely because of that skin. And then I stuck with him ever since.
It's a pretty great skin, and I know like a lot of the top players use Bodvar, and a lot of the top players use collector's editions. So, yeah. I mean, BMG, if you want people to use other legends, just like give us more skins on collectors. I'm just saying.
But to answer the question, yes, Bodvar is my favorite legend.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show, Twilight.
Thank you for having me.
See ya.
All right.
With that, we move on to the balance and meta discussion of the podcast. So, patch 2.7, nothing happened. It was so minor, in fact, that there were no patch notes on the subreddit. Basically, they switched up the legend rotation, and what else did they do? They didn't add any new skins.
I don't even remember. It was that minor.
Just a rotation, maybe some like
added a new controller, maybe like
no, it was like
they changed the sale items in the shop or something.
Not suck as hard or whatever. Like
servers,
they made it like so. Yeah, like it ran a little smoother or something.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing.
Well, either way, nothing much to talk about there. But we've been delaying talking about Gauntlets for a while, so I think it's time to finally get into it. And let's really discuss whether or not Gauntlets are OP. So the two things I've noticed so far, as far as Gauntlets goes, that are both complaints and praises, is that Gauntlets are low on damage, which like pretty much as far as their move kit goes in comparison to other weapons, it takes a lot longer to build up damage. and they're also very string heavy, which people don't really like the, getting caught in frame traps and constantly being, badgered by gauntlet moves. So those two are the big things that people usually use to weigh on both sides. Like, oh, it's underpowered because it has less damage. Oh, it's overpowered because I'm constantly in strings. How much of these factors do you think plays an effect as far as where balance is on gauntlets?
They're both accurate statements, but I think the second someone figures out how to play against gauntlets, like, it's over. Like, the gauntlets are so easy to play. I'll admit I haven't played a whole lot against gauntlets, but I've played with gauntlets a fair bit. Like, I basically only have played gauntlets since it was released, and it's the same thing I tell anyone who's ever asked me about core is just, it's super fun if I get to just do whatever I want. If you don't press any buttons, I'm gonna just like keep running at you and I'm gonna have the time of my life. But the second you start pressing buttons, the second you start jumping or dodging or attacking, I'm screwed. Like, it is so easy to outspace gauntlets. It is so easy to get out of the strings. Some moves on gauntlet, I'll admit, are actually like kind of ridiculous. Like, gauntlet downlight hits deceptively far. Gauntlet side sig hits deceptively far. But aside from like a couple outliers, gauntlets they have to get on top of you and they have to keep their momentum. And the second that you stop doing that, then the gauntlets are... I don't think they're underpowered. I think it's just like anyone who doesn't know how to play against them is going to struggle. But the second you figure out that sword neutralite beats like everything on the ground, like, oh no, what do I do?
I think in a lot of ways you're completely right. It is definitely a weapon that you have to space out, just like you have to space out guitars. For players like me who play guitars, I actually struggle a fair amount against the gauntlets because I can't afford to use that spacing. I have to get in close, and I feel like in a lot of situations, gauntlets will beat out guitars, whether it's just the directions that their moves can hit in or their deceptively long range, like you mentioned. And I do think they do a little bit less damage than guitars, but their strings are a lot easier to pull off as well. So, in my mind, I'm still a little bit split on how I feel about gauntlets in general. I think that they have a lot of potential to be great. I think they might be a little bit too easy to use, and I'm not sure that that's fully balanced or not by their low damage.
I think one of the things that I try to keep reminding people over and over again is that gauntlets are new, and that plays a huge role in how you react and how you feel against a weapon. Because on new weapons, you don't know approaches, you don't know, how to react to certain moves. Someone does a nair, the immediate punish is, I don't know, jump, down air if you're on, like, most other weapons. But people don't realize that because they haven't played against the weapon enough. And so a majority of the complaints I hear is that, oh my god, gauntlets are OP, you can't react to anything. And I'm like, of course you can't react to anything. No one can react to anything because no one's played the weapon for that long. It's only been out for 2 weeks. So that's something you really have to keep in mind. And I know that BMG has to sort of figure out a good way to balance, strengthening or decreasing the strength of the weapon to get it balanced in the long term, while also satisfying all the people who are complaining in the short term. Because in the short term, it's always going to be harder to figure out how to play against the weapon. And that's just something that people have to keep in mind.
Yeah, so going off of your general statement of it's new, I think and most people who have played games that are continually being expanded upon are familiar with the myth. I don't want to say it's true, I don't want to say it's a lie, but new things are going to be better, right? Like, a new character is supposed to be a little bit overpowered so that people will play it or so that people will buy it, right? That is essentially the myth that a lot of people are at least familiar with. I think that same kind of mentality is applied to gauntlets. I don't think gauntlets are overpowered by any means. Going to the subreddit, there was a couple strings out there that were thrown out where people go into training room, they'll do like a downlight side light into a chase dodge nair, into a dare, into a chase dodge neutral light, into a chase dodge dare, whatever. It looks insane. It comes out with 80 damage and you're like, oh my god, gauntlets are crazy. And then you look into the comments, and then there's none other than TWK going like, that's actually like a 1-frame chase dodge. You have to get that perfect. The odds of actually doing this correctly in game just like are astronomical. Not to mention the fact that at any time, if the opponent had pressed neutral light, it would have been done. Like that is what happens, and people like at the end of the day, BMG has come out and said, hey, this is a 50% win rate. Like everyone who's saying it's OP, like, and everyone who's saying it's underpowered, like, you're probably right, because I'm on that side.
I want to talk about that win rate real quick, because I've seen a lot of discussion from two different sides, people saying, hey, it has a 50% win rate, like it's pretty even. And then the other side who says 50% win rate means nothing because everything balances out eventually. That's
not true.
Which I'm going to go ahead and say, right, that's not true. The way that these win rates work, like the comparison I hear is that, someone who has gauntlets will go from bronze to gold, and once they're in gold, they'll start losing matches. And my argument is that if they get from bronze to gold and they go to gold and they stop progressing because they're losing matches, but they also are still winning matches because they're in gold, like the jump from bronze to gold is noticeable in win rates. Like that's a bunch of matches you just won in a row. That will give you a more than 50% win rate in the long term, no matter how even you are within gold. If you go from bronze to gold and back to bronze, that just means you had a good day and, suddenly you're evening back out to where gauntlets are anyway. And that's where you'll get a 50% win rate. But that doesn't mean that gauntlets are OP. That just means that, people were getting used to it or whatever, and now you drop back down to where you are.
So I kind of understand where they're coming from. Sorry, I'm like thinking about what they're...
Sure.
So with numbers and values and statistics, people who've taken statistics classes are familiar with the fact that you need more values so that you can understand truly the data, right? There is a big difference between saying I won one game with gauntlets and I have a 100% win rate, it's OP, and saying I've won 1,000 out of 10 games at whatever. And that's how like obviously the more games that are played, then you have more values and you have a better understanding of what is actually happening. And if everything is balanced and everything is working and matchmaking is working perfectly, you would want everything to trend to about a 50%. You would want there to be, a bell curve. There's guys who are over here winning all of their games. There's guys over here losing all their games. Bell curve, whatever. We can just spout out stupid statistics, value, numbers, words. But the point is, I understand that over time you want it to trend to 50%, and that's partly the weapon. It's also partly matchmaking. But as we're all familiar and all aware, that's not always the case. If a weapon is doing particularly well, for example, Spear used to do really well. That thing had a slightly higher win rate. I believe it was closer to 52, 53%. I've also heard arguments along the lines of people who are playing this weapon are not playing solely against other weapons, right? So if there's two Spear characters in a game, one of them's going to win, one of them's going to lose. That's a 50%. I understand that argument. I'm pretty sure this is just actually kind of spouting bullshit at this point. Sorry. If BMG probably has the ability to actually look at it and say, this is all of the Spear games ever, and just get rid of all of the ones that have two Spear characters, and then actually see it. This is how Spear trends against other weapons, or this is how Spear trends against sword, things like that. Obviously, we understand that the characters have two weapons, and so to a degree, if you're saying, oh, Core has a 50% win rate, does that really mean that Gauntlets has a 50% win rate, or does that kind of get busted by the fact that Hammer is a part of that? Or can you make the argument that Gauntlets has a 100% win rate as long as they have the Gauntlets and not the Hammer, right? You can kind of guess as far as that's concerned. But overall, BMG is saying, look, core, I know there's complaints about core, but right now he's got a 50% win rate across 2 weeks of data.
And most core players throw away their hammer anyway. Like, they want to try out the gauntlets. They're there for the gauntlets. And so I think core is a pretty good measure of gauntlets. And that 50% win rate is a lot of data. Like you said, 2 weeks. Like, that's enough to look at a trend. And the trend is 50%. And I think that speaks for its balance.
I'm just pretty excited to see where it goes from here, because honestly, I can't personally think of any change that BMG really should make to the gauntlets. As I've played with them and against them, there is no one single thing that I've been like, okay, that move is overpowered, that needs to be nerfed, that move is underpowered, that move needs to be buffed. There is nothing that I can say definitively I feel like has to be changed. So if I were BMG, I would honestly just leave them the same. Wait for more data. Wait for people to figure out how to play as them. Wait for people to figure out how to play against them. And I honestly think that they might have released just a pretty balanced weapon, but only time will really tell.
Yeah, I gotta kind of agree. I think there are a few things that people have complained about that I can sort of sympathize with, and so we're gonna go over a couple of them. Nair is a pretty crazy gimp tool. And a lot of people have talked about getting naired over and over and over again. And there's two things I have to say about that. One is that it really all goes back to that first argument I made. You're not used to the nair hitboxes, and you have to get used to it to avoid it, right? And so a lot of people are getting caught by nairs because they're like, their first reaction is to jump and go straight back to the stage. And if you know how to fall correctly and time your nair correctly, it will always keep catching them as long as they keep doing the same thing. So there is that. But at the same time, I can see the sort of complaints of, like, you know, so a lot of people just don't like gimps. They don't like being gimped. It doesn't feel very good, and I sort of get that. And so maybe there's something they can do about toning down nair reuse, like increase the cooldown. And that I can sort of see. Duke, you look very opposed to that.
If you're getting caught by the nair multiple times, stop jumping. Like, you have to be above them. I get it if they nair and then they're like fast falling into another nair or something like that. Maybe that's a little bit difficult. But like, it's the same thing where, like, all right, anecdotal. I struggled against sword gimps. Ground pound dare, it's dumb. I still think it's a little bit dumb. But for the most part, it's about information. The second you understand, oh, okay, I'm panic jumping every single time I get hit by this, and that's why they're getting the follow-up, just change your timings. I think yes, I think nair is a little bit strong in the sense that nair into ground pound can lead into a lot because ground pound has an insane force. But I don't think that's nair's fault, really. I don't think nair's like... I think people who are complaining about nair are getting caught by it a little bit too much. They're just kind of misplaying against it. But then again, I don't know. I haven't seen enough tournament footage of a core like doing insane nair things to be like, oh wow, that actually is really dumb.
Only time will tell.
Yeah. I think people who are complaining about nair, the only person who I think has any reason to complain about nair would be Sparky, and it's because he hates hammer recovery. But like, I think nair's good, but I don't think it is a huge issue. I think the biggest thing is just that it's very different, and it's very different from other nairs. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, I can definitely see that. Another thing I want to point this out, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize this, and when people start realizing it, it's going to make Gauntlets much more difficult to play against. Sidelight to nair has become one of the most crucial combo starters or combos, right?
It's a string.
Right. First of all, it's a string. You can dodge out of it, and a lot of people have discovered that. It's got a 1 frame gap, which from some people I've heard 1 frame, that's not nearly enough. Dodge has a 3 frame startup, so that 1 frame gap actually turns into 4. And that's something to keep in mind. Like, you have 4 frames to dodge out of that, and that is enough time. If you're mashing dodge, you'll get out. So that's great, but like in Qatar strings, even if you have a 1-frame gap, like if someone starts a Qatar string after you miss a dodge or something, then they can get that string and you'll get punished or whatever. The sidelight to nair can be jumped out of. If you jump within the 4-frame gap after the sidelight, you won't get caught by the nair. That makes that string really hard to use as long as you're playing against someone who knows that you could jump out of it. And like, I think that's really important to note. Like, it might be worth buffing sidelight to nair if we start seeing Gauntlet win rates go down because people realize, hey, if someone starts a sidelight, I just jump a bunch and they can't do anything after that. So I think that's pretty important.
Sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead,
I think that if people notice the trend of, they're jumping out of my sidelight, they'll start doing, or jumping out of my nair, they'll start doing things like sidelight recovery, and then going into the nair if they still can. I don't think it's necessarily something that needs to be buffed. I think that having a 1-frame gap is still very strong. Even if you can jump out of it, there's no guarantee that someone already will, and the strings are already very strong. So I think that even with that, I guess, a little bit of a setback, that it isn't a true combo at any point, I still think people are going to have a lot of success finding very, very powerful gauntlet strings, even if that can be jumped out of.
Yeah, and maybe that's true. We'll have to see. My time in the training mode has told me that after a sidelight, the only viable move you can do if your opponent jumps is a recovery. Nothing else will catch them in time, so long as your opponent knows what they're doing. And we'll have to see how well people can react to that. I do also want to talk about one more thing as far as gauntlets go in the future, and that's that core does not have very much dex, and gauntlets and a higher dex gauntlets character will come out. And it'll be interesting to see how frame data changes when that happens, because sidelight nair is a great example. If we get a higher dex character, in theory, sidelight nair will suddenly become true, and that would completely change the landscape of how combos works for core. I think BMG, for certain moves, keeps the frames the same regardless of dex, and if that's true, then that's probably good, but I think they have to be careful with making sure that sidelight nair may or may not become true. I don't know if you guys think that it's better for it to become true or it's better for it to stay as a string.
I think more. I think nothing should be true. I think more strings are fantastic, but
I agree. Completely agree.
All right. One other thing I just want to take a quick note of was that after I came back from Combo Breaker, I sort of checked out some of the other fighting games. And in ranked, one of the things that is super cool is having a replay button so that you can replay someone you just fought if you want to. I know that that's something I sort of request, so I just wanted to make a quick plea to the devs, like, give us a replay button. I think that'd be nice.
Using the podcast to promote your own personal agenda.
Duke, you look uncertain.
Creed, please.
I don't know. I think
you don't want a replay button?
There is no one I've played in ranked that I'm like, man, I really want to keep playing this guy. That's my personal opinion. And if I beat someone really hard and I want to, like, oh, hey, maybe I can farm this dude, like, odds are they're not going to click replay. If I lose really hard to someone and they ask me to replay, odds are I'm not going to want to replay them. Like,
maybe.
I personally think that the only reason they haven't put that feature in is that they're worried that people might use it for elo farming or boosting their friends or something like that. It's not so much an issue of, oh, I don't think the feature is going to be used, I don't think people are going to like it. It's that, oh, this kind of gives people a little bit of a way to cheat.
And maybe that's true, and maybe it's that, say, after 3 matches, you can't replay someone anymore. Especially if, or maybe even if they win the first 2 matches in a row, like you can't do a third replay or something like that. Like it has to be at least kind of even, maybe. And then you can just move on to like, customs and be like, hey, I really like playing with you. Let's go to a custom lobby and, spar a bunch. So
personally,
something like that.
I would much rather see like a request button that would, instead of requesting another ranked match, it would request to automatically move both players to a custom lobby. So that instead of playing another ranked match, if you really want to play each other again, you can just hop into a custom lobby. You don't need to go through the process of adding each other as friends, though I'm assuming that might come later, and finding each other's lobby. You would just press a button, the other person would press the same button to accept, and poof, you're in a custom lobby, ready to play.
I like that. All right. Well, with that, that's going to be the end of the podcast. We'll be back next week after the Wednesday patch, in which there is balance changes, and hopefully we'll see what they decide to do with Gauntlets. But until then, thanks to Twilight for coming on to the podcast, and thank you, Physic and Designated Asian, for being our co-hosts. And we'll see you guys next time.